Welcome to Humble Ground, a podcast where the heart of agriculture meets the stories that feed the world. Behind every meal is a farmer, a rancher, and a legacy of hard work. Here, we shine a light on their journeys, their challenges, and their triumphs, because every meal has a story, and it's time we heard it.
Hey everybody, welcome to the next episode of Humble Ground. I happened to get a project in southwest Kansas and called a good buddy of mine, and he lined me up somebody to do a podcast. We try to do these as we travel, and I guess today we find ourselves in Spearville, Kansas. Drove through here many a times, and pretty excited for this one. Without further ado, I'd like to dive in. You've got a really neat story and a lot of history, and so I think we probably just go way back to the beginning. I guess tell me about growing up as a kid and what was that like? Are you from here?
Yes, I am. I grew up on a farm 5.5 miles northeast of here, and it was a sheep farm, believe it or not. And my dad had sheep ever since I was born, and we lambed them out, and there's 7 kids in the family, and sheep are labor intensive. And so that was one of the reasons that he had sheep. He had a big family to take care of, so it made sense.
No. Did you all do any row crops or just stay on the livestock side of things?
We, we had a farming operation, and mainly at that time was wheat. We only did milo if our wheat crop failed, so then we come back with milo as our alternative. But now that's changed, though, milo and normal rotation of wheat, milo, fallow is our normal operation. So
it's crazy to see down here. It seems like wheat is definitely, and milo, I guess, is probably the 2 biggest crop. That irrigated ground obviously can get into a lot of different things. But driving down here, it seemed like there was a lot of wheat still.
There is, but wheat is losing favor to more milo and dryland corn is becoming more and more prominent. So wheat is a very good rotational crop.
Sure.
But in terms of putting money on the bottom line, you're probably better off with trying to do dryland corn or milo or, maybe soybeans. We don't do well in soybeans. We get too hot.
Sure. No, it definitely warms up. What's, looking back, what's one of your favorite memories growing up on the farm? I'm sure you had plenty of them, but does something stand out in your mind?
What stands out most is not a good memory as much as we had would have been 1954, I think. We had a major snowstorm. And, of course, I'm second to the youngest in the family. So here we are. My dad started into town to pick up the other siblings, and the other siblings took the car and went the opposite way, so they didn't intersect with each other. So my dad got stuck in town, and my mom and I and my younger brother were there, and I just remember that's back when you had the old crank phones, and she was just cranking it, but the lines were down to no avail. That was one of probably the memory that sticks most with me.
It's funny. We've got a guy we hired from Portland, Oregon, which it rains in Portland, but you don't get much other than that. And he's been coming here this summer, and he's like, man, you guys have the strangest weather I have ever seen, yes, and unless you're here, you really don't see it. Farming probably back then wasn't, I'm sure you had good years and bad years, but how did your dad get into manufacturing, I guess, and why? Was that something he just loved doing, or?
Well, my dad was very, very intelligent, for one thing. And the second thing is he had great mechanical skills. And so even back in probably the late 40s, 50s through there, he was continually kind of inventing things, and putting a corn head on a silage cutter so we could do silage, And then again, I think the year was 1954. They built a gymnasium here in Spearville. He's on the school board. and they needed a set of basketball goals. And so he and another guy basically invented fold-up basketball goals. And they grew it into a business. And, the basketball goals at the old gym here in town, the next set they built was over in Dodge at the Civic Center. And it grew from there, and they had, probably 20, 25 people building basketball goals here in Spearville at one time.
And still farming too?
Yeah, he was still farming.
Oh, my goodness.
But, I have older brothers, and I think Dad relied quite a lot on my older brothers and maybe a little bit even myself.
It's funny. Somebody, we just had an episode, I think they had 7 kids too. And he said Dad had a bunch of kids, so he had a lot of help at the farm.
Right.
And that's probably the case.
And this allowed him to kind of pursue his basketball goals and manufacturing there. And at the same time, we continued our farm, and we continued with the sheep and continued our lambing program. So
it's wild to see. There's so many people that don't understand that farmers and ranchers, a lot of them have a second job or start a second job. And just the work ethic that people have in this industry is phenomenal.
Well, you go back to tough times, and you have to figure out ways forward during tough times. And that's what my dad was trying to do, and he's pretty successful at it. And then the basketball goal business, they eventually sold off to a company in Champaign, Illinois. And so then my dad came back and bought the facilities, which is really just a blacksmith shop, in 61, or he bought it 60. And so we considered CrustBuster's startup date to be 1961. So
that's quite a few years.
Yeah.
Back then, was that something that while he was at the farm, he said, you know what, I want to build something that's going to help me on the farm, and I think there's an opportunity that could, I could sell that, or not sell it. Obviously, you got to sell it to make money, but I can help other farmers and ranchers with this particular product. Do you remember back then, was it just a product, or did he already have a line of products back then?
I think he had a line of ideas, Now, what you have to do is understand, we farmed 5.5 miles northeast of Spearville, but he also had farm ground 50 miles in Ness County, 50 miles away. So the problem was very inherent there. You had to move. You had to move your machinery. And so the ability to fold up, take it down the road was always paramount because of that history of having to move the machinery from Spearville basically up to Ness County. And in fact, as we grew, one of our slogans over the years have been the affordable portables. So we built machinery that was portable and hopefully affordable, so.
Oh, that's great.
And too, I don't mean to.
No, you're good. Hey.
But one of the things I think I really want to credit my father for is that, and the company that he was growing, that we can lay claim to have built the first commercially folding grain drill. Up until then, they were all individual sections that you pulled on hitches and stuff. So we very honestly and truly can lay claim to that. We're proud of that.
It's definitely something to be proud of. It's so cool to see. I had a buddy call me on the way down here, and they run one. And I don't know the exact size. I'm going to guess 20 or 30 feet, and have run it for a long time. And so you see them all across the country. How do you think he managed back then? And I guess, like you said, your brothers probably helped out and you helped out. But how do you think you managed farming and livestock and still then trying to build a business on top of it?
By being creative, I guess. I can remember as a kid, and I'm not trying to tell this story as glorification, but I can remember getting up when Dad was here in Spearville creating CrustBuster, we lived here in Spearville, not out on the farm, but we still had the sheep. So I can remember rolling out of bed every morning at 5:30 and going out and taking care of the sheep, and then going to school. So.
It's so interesting. I grew up in a town of probably 160 people maybe, and I live in a town of 500. So I moved up to the big city, I guess. But to see the kids that, whether that be dairy or whether that be livestock or whether that be stuff, how early they get up in the morning before school, go to school, and then get home and run a baler or whatever it is. Like, it's so awesome to see. And I think a lot of people don't understand the amount of work it takes to keep a farming or a ranching operation, in business. Do you guys still have sheep around, or did those go by the wayside a long time ago?
Sheep finally disappeared off the farm probably somewhere in the 80s. No, 70s.
Really?
Actually, 70s, yeah.
Really? Well,
but even after the company was going, we still had sheep out there.
Really?
And then was my younger brother that was really coming into farming, and he was the herdsman. I'm not sure if that was the term we called him, but
hey, I think it works.
But yeah,
I think it works. How do you remember? I love talking about the 80s. It's a terrible time, but I think there's so many great stories of people just pushing through it and making a lot of great things. Do you remember a lot about the 80s in terms of on the ag side, and also how did that affect it on the business side? I would assume there was plenty of challenges there as well.
I absolutely remember the 80s. Because my dad retired in 73, so I took over, and so I was that young, maybe somewhat energetic young person heading into a disastrous decade. But, the 70s were really one of if you had an asset, boy, that was great. If you could sign your name to a loan document, that loan or that asset continued to grow mainly because of inflationary trends, So the inflation got so bad during the late 70s that going into the 80s, the Federal Reserve Board, said we've got to stop inflation. So interest rates, now this sounds like that is not true, but I can tell you it is. Prime rate went up to above 20%. So if you had a variable rate loan and you're taking it into the 80s, that interest rate going to those kind of astronomical highs sucked every bit of equity out of your business that you had. And that caused the,
Of course, we catch a train. So,
but anyway,
yeah,
the sky-high interest rates really sucked every bit of equity out of not just our operation, but all operations. And farmland prices then plummeted, and they fell off about 40%. And that, when you finance a farming operation, farmland is your number one asset that is solid and you hold on to. Well, 80s, that even became a problem.
It's so interesting knowing like interest rates, like for a business per se. I imagine trying to think about buying metal and buying all of the the pieces and parts back then was probably quite a challenge. Did it affect your business as much as it affected the farm?
No, it affected the business, even as much as the farm. And we had to do some restructuring. And, quite honestly, we had a small feedlot, and we had to sell it off. And, we had to come up with cash somehow. And because the banks would not loan anything. But what happened is in 1985, a company called Speed King that was originated in Dodge City, they went into bankruptcy. So they sold the assets of the company, not the facilities, but the product line and et cetera, rights to build, at an auction in Wichita at a bankruptcy auction in 1986. And one way or another, we mustered up enough cash, and it wasn't easy, but we put together enough resources to buy that from the bankruptcy court. And so that's how now it's CrustBuster Speed King.
Gotcha.
So that's how Speed King came into play.
Gotcha. Well, it's wild to think, that one business, 15 miles down the road, didn't make it, and you all made it. I mean, I don't think people understand how hard those times were to get through, and just honestly, just to find a way to get through it.
No, it was very, very challenging, very difficult. But I've always thought and I have said that during tough times, the decisions you make during tough times are probably your most valuable decisions going into the future.
Oh, sure.
So.
Yeah, and
I mean, that may be common sense, but anyway,
hey, well, it worked out. You're still in business today.
Yeah.
So through the 80s, the 90s, how did the product line expand? Is it just you had your core set of products and you just made them, instead of having a 10 and a 20 foot, now you're up to a 30, 40, 50, and a 60 foot behind us? How did that evolve over time?
Well, we had our product lines, for CrustBuster. Then we also had the product lines from Speed King. But also part of the 80s, there was trying to think of the name of the program, Soil Conservation Reserve comes to mind. I'm not sure if that's exactly what they called it then. But we knew there was large amounts of acreage that was going to go back to native grass and retired out of production. And that was a pretty big program, especially out in the western and more arid areas, So we saw that coming, and so we took our grain drill and modified it to plant the fluffy seeds that most of your blue grandmas and stuff are. So we modified our grain drill to plant the acreage that was being presented. And then we went to Texas, to Plainview, Texas, and there was a company there called Hamby. But Hamby had already acquired a company called Caldwell out of Corpus Christi, Texas. Caldwell had a rotary cutter in their product line. And we knew to maintain those acres that was the maintenance that would be coming after planting the grass. You would have to mow the weeds, maintain it to establish the grass. So then we got in the rotary cutter business for a while.
Hey, you saw an opportunity and you took it, though. I mean,
yes.
That's like I said, I think that goes back to anything in ag. I think people are such. We had one of the first guests we had on. He made a comment that, man, farmers and ranchers are they have to be mechanics, and they have to be this, and they have to be that. Like, I think it just shows. Grit would be the word that comes to mind. You got to be, and so you saw an opportunity and you took it. What's been the toughest part about getting through all of those years in your mind, looking back?
Well, that's really hard to say, but volatility is tough to deal with. And the volatility can come from many different places, But one thing that is kind of unusual here, we tried to mix our offering to row crop farmers and grain handling, etc. But also we got in the cotton business. And we built module builders, which a lot of people probably don't even know what I'm talking about, bull buggies, And so cotton became through the 90s, because cotton was good. Cotton became a very big part of us, The other thing during the 80s, as the 80s was drained in everybody, we knew we couldn't support all the product lines that we had going at that time. And the product lines we had, we built offset disc, we built chisel plows, we built field cultivators, blah, blah, blah. So we knew that we couldn't support all of those. And I attended a conference at North Platte, Nebraska that was put on by the USDA, and it was launching no-till. Basically, that was what that conference was about.
Yep.
So as we came back, and we then decided, okay, let's get out of tillage, and let's concentrate on material handling. Let's concentrate on anything to do with planting, because you're always going to plant, and anything to do with material handling, basically, like seed, like bulk seed handling, and so forth. So therefore, then certain product lines grew out of that. But CrustBuster is obviously a tillage tool name.
Yep.
But we don't build a single tillage tool. So that's where we're at today.
Hey, businesses evolve over time, and 64 years? Is that what you told me?
I think that's about where we're at.
Oh, man. Does the farm, are your brothers still operating in the farm, or is who's taking care of the farm side of things? I assume this takes up a lot of your time.
I have never called myself a farmer.
Yeah.
Although I've filled in some, But no, my older brother did the farming. He passed away 2 years ago. So now my nephew-in-law does the farming, and he's got his own operation. But so we as a company, we act as a landlord, and really nothing more.
Yep.
But we try to influence what's going on though a little bit too.
Sure. But it's still in the family.
Yes.
As of today.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's neat to see how things evolve and change over time. What do you think's one of the most rewarding things that you've done over all of your years in business, over all of your years growing up on the farm? What's rewarding to you?
Of course, you always have to reflect back on family, and probably family has been one thing, has been rewarding. There's been challenges there, but like any family has, So that would be part of it. But probably if I look back and feel a certain amount, and I don't want this to sound like I'm being boastful, keeping this company in place as an independent, small manufacturing company through some very difficult times. I think that's probably maybe is what I'd hang my hat on.
That is definitely something to hang your hat on. What's the future look like, and where do you think things are headed in the next 10, 20 years?
We talked about, can't come up with a term I want to use, but this is one of the most turmoil type years that I have seen. Normally, we will write our business plan for the year. We will review our product lines, and we will say, okay, there's going to be emphasis on, say, Milo because the Chinese are buying Milo, or there's going to be emphasis on certain crops, and this is where we participate in that. But the turmoil and right now it's just hard to predict what's going to happen. Quite honestly, we just take right now today one month at a time.
It's a really hard time in ag that I think people don't understand.
Yeah. Well, see what drives our business with our grain drills and grain carts and seed handling, et cetera, is really the row crop farmer. Row crop farmer along with the cereal grains like wheat. And those crops right now cannot be growing profitably with the inputs that we have to put into it. I think any farmer will tell you that. So with that in mind, how's the guy going to go out and buy something new if he can't make the bottom line work today, you know.
Speaking of helping the farmer and the rancher, what's it like to know over the last 60 plus years how many people have bought your equipment or came back and bought your equipment? That's got to be a neat feeling to know that you're helping the farmer and rancher, whether that be, like I said, a row crop operation, whether that be somebody that's more on the other side of things. Like how rewarding is that to think about, sit back and think about?
It is rewarding to know we have a lot of product in the field. And, I've always, and I try to give the advice that what we have to do is serve our customers and do what's necessary, even these tough times, to do the right thing. And we're not without fault. We make mistakes, but take care of that customer and try your best to make him whole again. If you made a mistake, try your best. Take care of your customer.
Yeah, and I think it's great you say that. There's a lot of companies that get big enough, and I think you mentioned being a smaller manufacturer. There's a lot of companies that get big enough that they care about the dollar more than they care about actually helping somebody out and making sure that they're taken care of. So I love the approach of, making sure that customer service comes first.
I kind of feel that is, over the years, I really feel that's one of the merits of things that we have done as a company is to try everything we can to take care of our customer. So,
hey, you're still in business, so you must be doing something right.
Yeah. Yep.
So what's the family like? Do you have family working in the business now? Grandkids, it sounds like. What's that look like in terms of the future?
Well, I think it's something that is really reflective of what we as a company, because we look at it, at what we have here, and I'm proud of it. Don't get me wrong, but it's not me. It's not I. It's what we and what us did. But excuse me. I've worked with a lot of my uncles, and my uncles were the grandfathers now of at least two of the people that are very instrumental in our business here now. So I worked with their grandpas, and I'm going to go through one legacy here. I've worked with the grandpas on both sides, mother and father. I worked with their dad, and now I'm working with the two young men that are certainly part of the company here.
What a special thing.
Yeah, it's rewarding, and I look back and I think about, I worked with, probably about 4 or maybe 5 of my uncles over the years, so.
It's so neat to see how generational businesses work, and ag is super generational. And so it's exciting to see that the next generation's working here and what the future has in store. But I do have to make a mention. When I first saw you, we met here a little while ago, and at least you had the right color hat on. You always been a K-State fan?
Absolutely.
Oh, there's no other way. I got to put that in there because I got a bunch of KU people that listen to this.
KU is a wonderful institution.
Sure.
So is Wichita State. Wichita State's really come, I think, forward on this thing. But K-State is our school.
What would your advice be to someone that is, like you said, this time of year is really kind of been really hard in agriculture, and the foreseeable future seems to be a little uncertain? What would your advice be to somebody that's in ag to make it through the tough times, I guess?
Well, probably you have to realize this is part of life, and this is part of it. So you have to make it through. So you keep your hope alive, for one thing. And then the second thing if I were to give someone advice, never, ever give up. Stay in there. And there's many times we could have given up, but we never. And so we're here with whatever we have that we're proud of. We didn't give up. So
perfect. Well, anything else you want to talk about? I can't thank you enough for even taking the time, especially on short notice. But anything else you want to mention on?
I think maybe to wrap this up, I think your vision is that, and to your first question there, your vision on what you think ag will go to, I think is extremely important. And, I mentioned about no-till early, And now I think the soil health is really pretty much gravitating to the top. And soil health and regenerative ag and regenerative practices, I think, are very critical. And I think that vision is where we're going with our conservation drills and our different products we're coming with to deep band fertilizer, put the fertilizer down where it needs to be put into root zone. That drives us. Now, it's getting to regenerative and getting to soil health is a very controversial subject.
Very.
So if I could just sit here and say, I'm just absolutely certain that this is it, I'd feel a little less apologetic maybe to people that challenge you. But we have to know. And we have to know, excuse me, we have to know what these fields are going to look like for the future generations. And when again, I want to talk bad about tillage practices. You do away with your residue. You subject yourself to more erosion from both wind and water. So you really got to remember that topsoil and build it through soil health. I think that's a vision that I'd like to have for this company here.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a great way to wrap up. It's exciting to see the future and exciting to see what you built, obviously, but to know that the future and where you're headed in the future, because I think you're right. I think soil health, you're seeing a massive movement towards